Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another exciting night of NBA basketball.
With the first pick, the Detroit Pistons select Cade Cunningham from Oklahoma State University.
Chandler again. Oh, what a block by Maxfield! My goodness!
The Pistons are digging in. They got the depth. They got the big men. They got the better basketball team. No doubt about it.
There's Jaden playing the passing lane. Skies a jam. Dynamite dunk, and the crowd loves it.
Pistons need a three, and they have just under 3 seconds to do it. Here's Chauncey Billups. Here it is. He's got it. He's got it. Chauncey Billups hits the three. Overtime. Amazing. Out of bounds. Detroit basketball.
Pistons fans, welcome back to another edition of the Palace of Pistons Podcast, part of the Believe Network. I am your host, Mike Anguilano. Join me this week is special guest, Tim Forkin. And of course, as always, we have Aaron Johnson as well. So 2 OGs and special guest Tim Forkin. Fellas, how are you guys doing? Starting off the new year with 2 L's of different proportions. The Pistons did get their win, but how are you guys feeling now that the streak is over and we started a little new one there?
Doing good. I mean, look, it's a pleasure to have Tim on. I don't know if I've had a chance to really pod with Tim outside of one short-lived POP After Dark episode. He's always been hopping on when I'm not able to hop on the main show. So very excited to have Tim on here, and I know it's going to be a fun time. I was texting Tim earlier and told him he was going to have to play the role of Jasper this week. So he's gonna do his best, and we'll see where it takes us.
Oh yeah, I've got a lot. It's pretty hard bill to live up to, but no, Jasper does a great job. You guys do a great job, and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I think every time Tim's been the replacement for Aaron. So now we have like the first time mix of Aaron and Tim, both on the pod. Playing the role of Jasper though, that's just too hard. That's you're making life more difficult.
I also have a beautiful girlfriend, so I know him and I have a lot in common. It shouldn't be that hard. I have some Jasper-esque material in the chamber for today.
Is it a Doc Rivers voice?
No, it's not. It's not Daddy Troy
okay,
either.
Good.
It's not Daddy Troy either. We got something coming.
Okay. Well, before we get into the Pistons ending up losing that overtime game against the Utah Jazz and starting a new 2-game losing streak. Before we get to that, I'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's episode, and that is Bet Online. With the NFL playoffs right around the corner and the NBA season in full swing, Bet Online has you covered with all the up-to-the-second odds, news, and scores. With additional odds, lines, trends, and info on both desktop and mobile, you can access the world's best wagering information anytime. Head there today in on the action, see all the updated odds, and remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use Bet Online. Again, that code is BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use Bet Online. Bet Online, where the game starts.
Is the Pistons live win total line, is it 9.5 now? Is it single digits?
It was as of the last pod that Jasper and I did, but because BetOnline took it off and then they brought it back, and I think it was 9.5.
Gosh, I mean, I bet the under 27.5, so I'm doing great there. But
you're doing great.
So demoralizing that in January the win total for this team is expected to fall around 10, and if you took the under on 9.5. I don't think anyone could call you crazy.
They have less wins than the Lions.
Yikes.
Mind-blowing stuff.
It is mind-blowing stuff. I did use BetOnline for betting on the Pistons' victory over the Toronto Raptors and ended up making some money. I did get in about 8 minutes before OG Anunoby was traded, so that helped considerably, but definitely use our promo code if you plan on doing any sports betting And we hope that you'll use the sponsor for this episode, and that's Bet Online. Guys, let's get into the end of the losing streak and the beginning of a new one. The Pistons ended their 28-game losing streak against those skeleton Toronto Raptors. Anunoby was traded, but RJ Barrett, Manuel quickly were not available. Not to put a caveat on that victory, still a win no matter what. They followed it up, however, by being decimated by the Houston Rockets, and then they lost in overtime to the Jazz. In an interesting way. They had a season high in terms of points scored in a game, but they also gave up 150 plus to a Utah Jazz team that really isn't that good. They are pretty good at home. I was looking at some of their splits. They're a shockingly good home team. Still, could not get a win in a game that I think you probably should have gotten a win. There were some interesting oddities from Monty Williams in terms of lineups for that game. But we'll go ahead and get into all of that. Let's start with the win against the Toronto Raptors on Saturday night. Guys, it was a tight one, 129-127. Anything you can take away from that win other than just getting a monkey off your back and trying to move forward? I know there were a lot of articles talking about corners being turned and morale changing, and I didn't necessarily buy any of that. It seemed like it was just going to happen eventually, and it ended up happening. And, did anything really come from that win? Not sure yet. I think it's a little early still, but anything from that win that stuck out that matters, Tim?
It's more of the same. Like, winning one game will never make me feel a certain way about an entire season unless it's like a playoff clinching win or something. Like the idea that the team has turned a corner or has changed after one win. Obviously, we've seen what they've done since. I mean, Cade's been playing better lately. You love to see Bogey get hot. You love to see Burks be anything but a trash can lately. I mean, Duran back and playing well, but none of that accounts for how many times the team turns the ball over, how poor Isaiah Livers has been playing. They can win a game and still have all of the same problems. So I don't necessarily take the stance that, and I don't think any of us do, that the Pistons have somehow gotten a monkey off their back, and it sure doesn't seem like they have by watching them.
Yeah, I mean, winning a game is great, but it's a normal thing to do. Like, there's no reason to celebrate winning a regular season game, especially when it's come after 28 straight losses. I mean, the bottom line is it's a horrible team. It's a horrible roster construction. The coaching job has been shoddy at best. And when you add all that together, the results are what they have been. Cade has been spectacular for the past month or so. Like you mentioned, Tim, Bogdanovich shooting the ball better. Alec Burks as of late playing better. They've been better with Jaden Ivey on the court and starting rather than Killian Hayes. Shocker. Like, how did we not know that? I don't understand how that took until December to figure that out. It's just crazy to me that it took that long when there's last year's footage and stats widely available. But no, I mean, it was a win-win. The stars aligned for them with the OG trade happening and the Raptors being without OG and Precious Achua and being down, a couple guys. And the Pistons kind of had that game circled. Toronto was on a back-to-back and all of that. So it was the stars kind of aligned for Detroit, and good on them for capitalizing on it. But then you get a Houston team, which albeit they are good at home, but you just get absolutely blown out of the water by them. And Cade has his worst game of the year. A lot of guys just play absolutely terrible. And then you go to Utah and you have a chance to win. You get into the final minutes of the game and everything seems to fall apart, as always does for Detroit. You end up forcing overtime. You get run off the court in overtime. And it just feels like, well, the start of the next losing streak is here. That's 2. And you got to start looking at the schedule again to see, okay, when can Detroit maybe sneak away its next win? Like, can they get one in San Antonio later in the month, or does it go past that? And, that's the kind of stuff where it's like, I don't believe they've turned a corner of any sorts. They finally got a win. Shocker. That's what an NBA team is supposed to be able to do. They should be doing at least 50% of the time. So No corner turning here. Yeah, it's a monkey off their back, but now the fear is how long does this next losing streak last?
Well, let's talk about that Jazz game. I don't know what you could take out of the Houston game other than it's like a throw it in the trash and just move on to the next one. Let's talk about the Jazz game. Fourth quarter and overtime. The Pistons were in it in the fourth quarter. Really like the third quarter. It was a very good game. Arguably the best game of the year. I mean, all things considered. The Burks heave at the end of the fourth was just crazy. And he has been playing a lot better. He was 9 of 17 from the floor. It's hard to take him off the floor. He finished with 27 points. We can talk about the rotation stuff, in any particular order, but just some oddities from Monty Williams. Isaiah Livers played 40 minutes. He played technically 36 minutes. Marvin Bagley's out of the rotation. James Wiseman is in. He played 16 minutes. Ausar Thompson continues to get fewer and fewer minutes. He was at 11 minutes. Killian Hayes got 13 minutes. Marcus Sasser is out of the rotation. Tim, when looking at, because it seems like this was an avoidable loss if Monty Williams had any idea on what the rotation should be. It's like I couldn't help but think this is like a Frankensteinian roster that's half young guys, half vets, and Monty just goes back to the vets. I get it's hard to go away from Burks when he's that hot. I understand that, but Bogdanovich playing 42 minutes when it's clear that you had guys available who could have soaked up some of that time. Ausar Thompson, for one. They went with Wiseman, who, I mean, at this point could count as a vet, for 16 minutes. What would you take out of that game in terms of the rotation stuff? And would you do anything differently? Because to me, it seemed like a clear showing of Monty just seeing what sticks and going with it.
Yeah, I wish we were on, I wish I had my soundboard right here, because I would go one by one. I'd say Ausar Thompson playing however many 10 minutes. I would do James Wiseman playing more than 0 minutes, and I would do Livers playing 40 minutes. That's just a big red no error button. I would push on that. Like those kinds of decisions over the course of a season lose a locker room and obviously lose you games. And one of the main points I come into like this question and the pod in general with is like, this is the first time in my life where I think like all three of us, most casual Pistons fans we know, the reporters, and everyone else except for Monty Williams can like see, they can see like, oh, just don't play Wiseman, play Bagley instead, play Ausar more, play Livers less. How about Jaden Ivey? He should be starting and playing. He is starting now. He should be playing a lot. Like this is the first time where we've been unreasonable. I know Aaron and I are younger than you, Mike. Like we grew up with some unreasonable Pistons takes. We've since grown into better ones. But this is the first time where it feels like everyone in my life like kind of knows what the Pistons should be doing, except for the Detroit Pistons, except for Monty Williams. And we'll talk about except for Troy Weaver later. God, I wish I would do everything I could to make $87 million and not do my job. I would do everything I possibly could, because the last game the Pistons somehow used their vets to have it be a heartbreaker for the fact that they gave up 154, scored 148, and had crazy shot making for the first time. Like that's the first time they've had Cade, Bogey, Burks all just doing crazy stuff for over 48 minutes. That hasn't happened this year, and it did. I run out of words to describe, and I have more Monty stuff we'll say for a little bit here, but like I run out of words to describe just how impactful these little decisions are. And then we see like after the game, Jaden Ivey's dad tweeting about like smartest man in the room, Ivey not really getting in from any of the fourth quarter or overtime. It sucks when you watch a game and all of the cool things that happen. Like you're actually into a game, and it's just mired by these little decisions that any of us at home could make.
Yeah, I mean, it took Alec Burks having an incredibly hot shooting game, the heave at the buzzer. It took Boyan just being unconscious from beyond the 3-point line. And it took 31 points and 13 assists from Cade Cunningham to just be in that game against a not good Utah team. And I just look at the guys that are playing, and I look at someone like Marvin Bagley, who, like, is Marvin Bagley changing the record for this team? No. But for him, finally healthy, finally playing good basketball, even looking improved on the defensive side of the floor, and he loses his rotation spot to James Wiseman, who so clearly isn't an NBA player. That's the kind of stuff that I don't understand how that works in a locker room. You are financially committed to Bagley for another year. Wiseman will be a free agent at the end of this year and has no trade value. I just don't get that kind of decision making. Marcus Sasser, you traded assets to get him. You traded assets to get the first round pick that you used on this guard. A guard that came into the league older, not a first year, not a second year college player, not that one and done that might take a little bit longer to be able to go out and play minutes for you. Like, you look at guys picked around where he was in the first round of the draft. You look at Denver and Julian Strawther. There's Brandon Pajensky and the Warriors. Like, those guys taken that had played 3-4 years of college ball that were taken late in the first, they're playing, and they're playing on really good teams. And Marcus Sasser can't get in over Killian Hayes, another guy that is not an NBA player. I just do not get it. Jaden Ivey last night, not having a world beater of a game. Utah playing a very big lineup. Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, Simone Fontecchio, John Collins. Like, they had a lot of big guys out there. It was tough to put him on the court when you had to keep Alec Burks in the way that he was shooting and playing, and obviously with Cade out there. So I'm not even going to knock on that, because I get that decision making, but I just don't understand the decision making with rotations for this team. I mean, Isaiah Livers playing 40 minutes last night, and I honestly, people texting in group chats or buddies texting when late in the fourth, Livers took a 3-point shot. He got the ball, freaked out with it, took a three, it got blocked, and I had people texting me like, "What is he doing in the game? Like, he looks like he's afraid for his life," and I don't know what to say. Like, it's year 3 for him. It's kind of sink or swim for him this year. We said it going into the season. He's been injured, but there have been flashes. He's got to stay healthy, and he's got to put it together this year. And he all of a sudden went from out of the rotation to playing 40 minutes last night and playing key minutes late in the game. Whereas, like, Kevin Knox, as sad as it is to say, a guy that you picked up mid-season, might be their best option at the 4 spot right now. I just don't know. There's so many confusing things, and I'll still go back to the point that I said last week where, I don't think Monty has a great roster to work with. I get it's tough, and at some point, you can't just play the same 10 guys every night and lose the amount of games that you're losing and not make any changes and not give any of these other guys a chance. But, like, maybe it needs to be Marcus Sasser that's getting the opportunity and Marvin Bagley that's getting the opportunity, and not Killian Hayes and James Wiseman. It's just insane to me. I think it's a lot of it has to fall on Troy Weaver, that you look at this roster, and I think the Pistons should be playing about 7 guys a night right now just by looking at who's on the team. But man, oh man, it drives me nuts seeing some of the rotation decisions from Monty Williams, and I think it certainly played a factor in the loss last night. I mean, Kevin Knox played 13 minutes. Asar Thompson's playing 11 minutes. Like if Thompson's going to play 11 minutes and Sasser can't get on the court, you got to get them some reps at some point, especially Asar Thompson, who's as young as he is. Like he needs to be playing organized basketball. Get him down to the G League, I guess, and let him get some running because if James Wiseman's going to play more minutes than your number 5 pick in the draft, I don't know what to say. I really don't.
Well, the most egregious thing to me is, okay, you gave up 154 points. And Isaiah Livers is not a world beater of a defender. And Monty preached defense. I mean, it's the reason that Jaden Ivey couldn't crack the rotation early in the season. Preaches defense. In a game where you so clearly had no defense, neither team really did, to be honest. Why is Asar Thompson, probably your best defender, getting 11 minutes when Isaiah Livers is getting more than triple that in crunch time? Why not throw Asar out there as just a high-energy, defensive-minded wing in a game where you so clearly needed something on the defensive end to get, 2 stops and you win that game? 11 minutes is appalling. Less than Killian Hayes. That's, to me, that's the most egregious one because you so badly needed a little bit of defense late game and in overtime and just did not go for that. I mean, even throughout the game, 154 points, you got to be bad the entire game on defense. And 11 minutes for arguably your best defender is an egregious oversight for Monty Williams to give minutes to Isaiah Livers instead. That's the head scratcher for me.
Well, I think big picture, how concerning is it that the number 5 pick in the draft isn't good enough to play 15, 20, 25 minutes on a 3-31 team? How concerning is that he's not trusted enough or not valued enough to be on the court, and that there are guys that were picked up off the waiver wire a month into the season that are playing more than him? It's concerning. And I'm not saying Asar Thompson has been lighting the world on fire on either end of the court lately, but he's got to be out there. You won 3 games. You've got to play your young guys. I don't know what to say. Maybe he doesn't play 30 minutes, but 11 minutes, playing 25 minutes less than Isaiah Livers, playing less than Kevin Knox. I can't see how that's a winning recipe, long term or short term.
Yeah, we need to the Monty Williams stuff in game. Like, it's even more of a slap in the face when you hear and read the things that he says outside of the game to like justify these decisions. Like I texted you guys both, like we need to make like a compilation or like a Monty Williams quote tracker just to like have a place for all of the boneheaded things that he has said about these rotations and like about who he's playing. I'll start with this one. Monty Williams on starting Isaiah Livers. And I'm taking these out of context. Like I'm not going to give you the full quote because I have a point to prove. Monty Williams on starting Isaiah Livers. That's who I am. What does that mean? He goes on to explain like I'm the type to shake things up, but that's who you are, putting a guy in the starting lineup that has not done anything and playing him 40 minutes when you desperately need to keep winning games. I know we need wing size players, or the Pistons need wing size players out there. That's fine. You have Kevin Knox, who, and Aaron, you said it before. It's a sad thing to say when you got to pick Knox over Livers. I'll give you some more from throughout the season. This is recent as well. It's tough to figure out how to play defense. It seems so. After losing Isaiah Stewart, Williams said, now we're a bit undersized and getting beat on the glass. And then separately, on playing Wiseman over Bagley, it's hard to play 3 bigs. We've had better spacing with rim rolling bigs. How can both of those two things be true at the same time? You have Isaiah Stewart, who is undersized, but we've had better spacing with rim rolling bigs, and you're not playing Bagley, but Bagley's better than Wiseman. He's a better rim rolling big than Wiseman, and both of them would be better out there if you want rim rolling bigs than Isaiah Stewart, who has played significantly more minutes. There's some other ones in here. When Alec Burks was at the very depths of his cold streak, Monty Williams said, "You're not just going to go away from a guy like Alec Burks because of the body of work he has in his career. I see the work every day." It might have been good to play Ivy in some of those games where Burks was really, really struggling. Um, Going to injuries. This is November 16th, right before the Monty Morris is out for 6 to 8 weeks report. Williams said Morris didn't practice today. Hopefully we can get him to ramp up soon. So he was expecting Monty Morris to like come back, and he didn't have any understanding that he wasn't coming back. I mean, I could go pull up more, but the things that Monty Williams is saying at the podium are equally as terrible as what he's doing in the game. And you would think like very rarely do you see a coach like explain how bad they are in the media. And he has been doing that. That goes back to my original point of like, I think he's trying to make $87 million by not working. I think maybe he wants to work from home. Maybe he wants to sit like get some sort of buyout. Like we're at the point where we like these are real questions. Like we're not just being like fan brain here. Like this is a real question. Is he trying to get fired? There's no way a coach who is as widely respected and I think was actually good in Phoenix and New Orleans and in OKC for a little bit. Like he's actually a good coach. I actually want to believe he's actually a good coach. But you can't tell me that this isn't some scheme to get some of that $87 million by not. But like let me sign this contract and let me do everything I can to get out of it.
It's not just us locally that feel like we're banging our heads against the wall at some of these decisions being made by him and the rest of the coaching staff. I mean, he is, as you said, widely respected amongst the league, amongst national writers, and even they, when they watch the Pistons, are saying, that there's some, interesting decisions and quotes like that from these writers and reporters about the decisions Monty Williams is making. And like you said, he was a good coach in Phoenix. He was a good coach in New Orleans. And it's just been a whirlwind of scratching your head at the decision-making that has been going on since he became the Pistons head coach. I mean, the song and dance that we've done, Killian Hayes starting over Jaden Ivey, this team immediately looking better when they took Isaiah Stewart out of the starting lineup and going with a guy that could shoot the ball, just playing one big, how it opened up the paint, how the team started shooting better. Like, these were things that were known. It didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that Cade Cunningham needed more spacing around him, or that Jaden Ivey is a better basketball player than Killian Hayes, or that Isaiah Stewart has never been, nor will he ever be, a starting level power forward in the NBA. So it feels like we're almost sort of repeating last year in the fact that we're trying to learn so much about these young guys that we already know. Like, we know from last year, Isaiah Stewart at the 4 didn't work. And we know through the last 3 seasons of his career that Killian Hayes has never been good for an extended period of time. So I just don't get it. It's tough to come on here and say Monty Williams needs to be fired or anything like that. Like, he did get a big contract because he has that reputation and that, to use his words, a body of work behind him that shows he can be successful and has a successful resume. But I can't look at what he's done and say, part of the losing streak doesn't come down to coaching. Like, it certainly absolutely does. And it feels like we are from the outside seeing things that I don't understand how it's not being seen in the building more so than ever. I feel like every year, as people that aren't in the building every day, people that aren't in the locker room, we have these ideas and thoughts that even if, we think they're right, we don't understand what's going on internally. It just feels like this year, some of the decision making is so off the wall, is 12 months late. And I'm befuddled by it. And I don't know how it changes until I guess the roster gets a whole lot better.
Yeah, one more Monty quote that like fully wraps up everything that you just said. This is in training camp. He goes, and mind you, the Pistons take like I think the least amount of threes in the league. If not, they're like close to it, and they certainly make the least. In today's economy, I think a lot of guys are jacking up threes that they shouldn't take. What does Monty Williams care about the economy right now? He's making $87.5 million to be the most boneheaded coach in the league. And you said it, Aaron, like we probably wouldn't have that many more wins if he was just like competent. The roster's bad. We'll certainly get into what we think the front office can do later. But you have to admit that like some of the win, like maybe it's 2, maybe it's 4 more wins could have happened over that 30 games if he was just like making these decisions that we could all see. And to have a quote, he told us what he was going to do in the very beginning. I think a lot of guys are jacking up threes they shouldn't take. Well, jacking up threes would be the only way this team could steal a win. And we almost, like the Pistons almost did last night in Utah by jacking up a bunch of threes. So yeah, you said it perfectly, Aaron, and I'll add on with this. Like, I think Monty is like telling us what, like, what his mission is every day and every decision.
Tim, to answer your question, they're dead last in threes made per game in the league, and they're 27th overall in 3-point percentage. And I wanted to say the full quote from Monty because I just pulled it up on what he said yesterday about starting Isaiah Livers, and that's who I am. I'm going to try to find something to get us going. I decided yesterday I didn't even think about it. That was Monty Williams on starting Isaiah Livers, finishing off with, I didn't even think about it. So I feel like we're just waiting for change to happen. Tom Gores went out and said that change is coming and soon. I don't know, soon is a pretty relative term. The last ice age was, not that long ago in the grand scheme of the world. So soon is a relative term, but since Tom Gores went out and said that, the Knicks went out and acquired OG Anunoby, a player that was linked to Detroit in some capacity per The Athletic. He's staying in New York. His agent is Leon Rose's son. They have a deal lined up, almost guaranteed. So what kind of change are we talking about? Is it going to be a move to get Cade a true sidekick? Is it going to be dipping into the pool of young players to go and get an impact player this very second? Is it going to be just moving Joe Harris for something and moving on from Bogdanovich, getting the vets out and forcing, almost moneyballing Monty Williams into playing Asar Thompson and Jaden Ivey, just like how Billy Beane forced Carlos Pena out, sending him to Detroit in Moneyball? What is this change going to be? I mean, is it going to be before the deadline? I think DeJounte Murray and that crop of guys become a trade available the 9th or maybe the 5th. Aaron, what is this move going to be, if anything, and to what scale of change should the Pistons be looking at?
Yeah, I don't honestly know. I mean, any move that they make right now is going to have to be so marginal that it's really not going to matter all that much. The first round pick for next year is tied up. They don't have a ton of other assets to work with in the short term right now, outside of down the line first round picks, which I really don't think you should be trying to sell off of as a team with 3 wins in the middle of January. So I don't know what change is really coming until potentially the offseason, where we're looking at a lowly regarded draft and a lowly regarded free agency class, where, if you look at the wing, which is probably where the Pistons are set to target help at most earnestly right now. OG was, arguably the biggest name. He's now off the market. You're talking about paying a 32-year-old Pascal Siakam, Miles Bridges, or a 30-plus-year-old Tobias Harris. And, I don't think any of those guys take this team that much closer to the playoffs or the play-in. Like, there's no star to get for this team. They can't trade for DeJounte Murray right now unless Atlanta really wants Jaden Ivey and Isaiah Stewart and one down the line first round pick or something like that. There's no fixing this season. This season is gone. It's forgotten. And the disaster that is this year is just going to have to continue. There's just no flexibility to make a big enough move that's really going to change this right now. I mean, unless there's someone that just has absolutely no trade value that the Pistons are willing to take on and see what happens with, aka Zach LaVine. Like, I just don't know how they realistically get all that much better. They need to make a move. They need to get another wing, but it's just not going to be a guy that is all that talented. It's going to be a bench wing. Like, maybe they go get a Royce O'Neal. Maybe they go get a Dorian Finney-Smith from Brooklyn, but feels like Brooklyn has those guys priced at a pretty high number. And, like, I'm not trading a future first-round pick for either of those guys. So I don't really know what Detroit does to get all that much better in the short term. And with the free agency class and the draft class ahead, I'm really not sure how they get that much better this summer either.
Yeah, there's certainly a few players on the Pistons that other teams would want. Cade, Bogey, Ivy, probably Stewart, I think is actually almost like for sure. Duran. But you like Asar, like some team, like a younger team or like a team that like has a good shooting development program, like they would take a chance on Asar. But like if you're the 29 other teams and you have valuable players, you're not looking. The Pistons like almost cannot be the best package for a team outside of like we mentioned, like a Zach LaVine trade. I'm looking at the list of the names that they've said and some other like wings. Like, you're not getting Jeremy Grant back. Like, they even if his contract isn't that great right now, it's going to be as the cap goes up, and he is like the perfect wing for a team that's trying to get better. You're not getting Mikal Bridges. Like, he's going to be way too expensive, and the Pistons certainly, unless they're throwing one of their three best players or three best young players in it, like they're not getting him. You're not getting Ingram or Zion. You're probably not getting Jalen Green or Tyler Hero, like that scoring punch type. You mentioned Aaron DeJounte Murray's pretty hard to trade for. This might be the last year of DeJounte Murray being pretty hard to trade for. And then, like, I personally don't think, like, there's no way OG Anunoby and Siakam were like actual targets for the Pistons. Like, there's no way that they thought they had the assets to go get them unless they're trading Cade. Like, OG especially. Like, I find it very hard to believe that was nothing more than like someone from the Pistons being like, hey, throw our name in the ring for these players that we're certainly not going to get. You might want OG or Siakam. You're not getting them. So some people want to date supermodels. They're probably not going to get them. So Tobias Harris is the name on this list that, whether it's this year or most certainly in the offseason, he seems like the name that could be a Piston. Just familiar. I believe he has family, or his wife or somebody is from here in his family. Like, there's he's going to be cheaper than his 47 million price tag right now. If you get him on expiring, you could send out Harris and Wiseman and basically just be there like for this season. But what do those two players help the Sixers? Like, they could just keep Tobias Harris. So yeah, I agree. You look down the list of players who the Pistons might want or might make sense, and they all seem pretty lofty at this point. I believe the last time I was on, we went through this list as well, and like, it's going to continue to be the question: is there a name we're not thinking? Is there someone available that like Mike for the Cavs that Donovan Mitchell suddenly became available and you're able to trade for him? But I don't know, would the Cavs make that trade again? Like, it seems like Mitchell's on his way out, and you got a good playoff year out of him, but there's consequences to trading for a player that doesn't want to be here. He who shall not be named, Miles Bridges, also seems in this dystopian world we live in like a realistic target, because what other team would be dumb enough to purposefully bring this guy in to your franchise? So that's my final pick of who they could, like, the change is coming, and it happened to be probably one of the worst character people you can find in the league. Wouldn't put it past the Pistons to make that their big splashy move.
I really hope that's not the big splashy move. But I also don't really think there's a big splashy move to be had. Tim, I think you hit the nail on the head. The players that they're going after or have been theoretically linked to, there's no way that they could realistically get those without a first round pick, without control of a first round pick this upcoming year. I find it impossible to get an instant game changer. That would be the real change, is figuring out a way to get your pick back from the Knicks. That would be the big splash. It is probably going to be moving Burks for an asset. It's going to be moving Bogdanovich for an asset or two, and forcing Monty to play some of the younger guys and seeing what you have. I feel like every year now that we've done the podcast, at least 6 times in the last 3 years or whatever that we've been doing this, I keep saying that this is an evaluation year. See what you have, go into the off season, put pieces around the players you are going to keep, and build. And they're doing it again. They're going to have to do it again because the vets they have are just, it's just not working for one reason or another. To me, that change is going to probably be in the next couple of weeks, like 2-3 weeks, that they send out Bogey for a pick and a player, send out Burks for 2 seconds or whatever it's going to be to make salaries match, and just put Sasser Thompson, pencil him in for 20 plus minutes a night, put Ivy in, pencil him in for 25 plus minutes a night, and see what you have with these guys. And if an opportunity becomes available, and probably moving on from Joe Harris too, as another expiring, see what he can provide, because he's another one that's a coach's decision DMP. And I don't know what the expectations were for Joe Harris coming into the season, but they most certainly haven't even been close to being met. I feel like we've said this the last 3 weeks, but change has to be coming sooner rather than later as the losses continue to pile up. I think they'll get a chance to get a win against the Spurs, but again, great, you're 4-36. Not a whole lot different from 3-37, not dramatically. So a change has to happen. Do either of you think that a front office shakeup is even within the realm of discussion?
Not
during the season.
Not from what we've heard, which is concerning, because you want a guy that doesn't know where his job stands or feels that his job is on the line. You want him running your trade deadline. You want him trying to send out young pieces and future picks to make a big trade. Like, do you want that to happen? That's scary to me. Like, if in a perfect world, the Pistons could move Bogdanovich and move Burks and get enough assets back to combine with guys like Jaden Ivey, Isaiah Stewart, Sasser Thompson, and what the picks that they have to get a guy like Larry Markkinen. Whatever that combination is, you do it. You have Cade, and you have Markkinen, and you have Duren, and you go from there. But it's just not something that feels realistic at this point. It feels like Utah values him very, very highly, as they should. He's a really, really good player, and good contract. But I don't know how Troy Weaver makes this team all that much better without digging into the asset collection and making a risky move. And he might kind of have to do that in order to save his job. I mean, Troy Weaver can't do nothing at the deadline and expect to keep his job going into the offseason. So you're in a lose-lose situation in the reality of it. Like, you're either going to do nothing, and I guess maybe the win is that you move on from Troy Weaver in the summer, or Troy is going to try to make a big trade, and there's going to be a lot of risk attached to it, whether it's the contract, whether it's the player, whether it's what's been shipped out. And you could be looking at it in the summer after the disaster of a season continues and be thinking, why the hell did we let that decision be made? So Pistons aren't in a great spot, as they haven't really been all year.
Mike, I know you are, but Aaron, are you familiar with the movie Draft Day starring Kevin Costner?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
All right. Well, I'm going to spoil a little bit of it for you in the audience, but there is a GM, ironically with the last name Weaver, who is under pressure to make a splashy, big move and save the Cleveland Browns organization, right? And on draft day, he is able to finagle his way to the first pick, back to the sixth pick and the seventh pick, and he's trading all these players and drafting all these guys, and basically he creates a new foundation for the entire franchise in one draft day. And I'm proposing that 2024, the movie Trade Deadline comes out. Instead of Sonny Weaver, it's Troy Weaver. And the only way the Pistons can save their franchise is if something so cinematic and storybook happens where Troy Weaver is able to, I mean, he is the rookie GM, but like to pick on some rookie GM, get some crazy asset, turn it into something else, turn those two things, and like what you just said, end up with Lauri Markkanen on the team. Like it's going to take some sort of script writing or movie trick or cinematic effect to get the Pistons like a normal, back into normalcy in one like day in one season. There's no realistic human way that Troy Weaver can get the Pistons to any sort of like separation between where they are now and like a positive future between now and the deadline, now and the end of the season, now in free agency, and even free agency. Like, I'm not sure what it's going to do. It would take, like, I trust Kevin Costner to get the Pistons out of this faster than I do Troy Weaver. So, Mike, you can add on to the analogy I'm making here. It would take magic.
CGI. That's what it would take, is like CGI generated players playing well in Pistons uniforms. Hey, if there's somebody named Vontae Mack in this upcoming draft, then we have our storybook story already writing itself.
We'll figure out who the draft's Vontae Mack is.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Is there another big that we like? Is there another like big who's projected as like a second rounder that we can take first overall that will kick off this entire improbable change? Or is there a, could we trade for Andre Drummond? Could he be the one to like start off the snowball effect that gets us Mikal Bridges, Lauri Markkanen, and somebody like that?
There's already been a movie called Return of the King, so we have to pick a different name. Yeah, it just doesn't seem feasible. It's like they almost have to lean into the bad, just accept it, trade your vets, and just be bad as young players, and just lose games and have Monty, try to figure out what he did with the Phoenix Suns and all those young players and translate it to them. I really don't know. But standing pat at the deadline just can't happen. You got to make the bare minimum moves to either send out your bad salaries to collect anything, or acquire a couple more seconds and stockpile some seconds. They have to do something, but they just don't have a big splash in them. I don't think
they'll have to trade Bogdanovich to some team in exchange for them to like stock the plum market that's at the Pistons Performance Center. Like that's like it's something.
Yeah. Aaron, any thoughts here as we finish off this episode of the podcast? The next couple of games are pretty tough for Detroit. They will play the Golden State Warriors today, for those of you who are listening tomorrow for us recording the podcast. And then I believe they play the Nuggets and the Kings in some order.
Yep. Yeah, I'll be at the Kings game next Tuesday. Is it the 9th? 10th, something like that. So
the 9th.
last name I'll bring up, who is supposed to be a restricted free agent this summer and is playing a little bit better lately for the Chicago Bulls, is Troy's guy, Pat Williams. That's a guy that I could see Detroit going after, whether they do it in the trade market and try to get him now from Chicago, or they offer him a big sheet in the summer. We know Troy likes to go after the guys that he's reported to have liked, and Williams was a big name for him in that 2021 class that Troy absolutely loved. He loved that 2021 class. So Pat Williams is another guy that I could see the Pistons going after.
It was 2020. So you're trying to tell me that
2020.
Troy Weaver is going to trade for a reclamation project that he had a draft crush on, that maybe he would have taken with the Pistons pick if they were available? It doesn't really seem like something he would do.
No.
I'd never really get that out of him. But now that you mention it, maybe he would. I don't know. You don't really get the sense that he hangs on to players that he's loved for a long time and doesn't really see them for what they are, and still ends up acquiring players or believing in players that he once loved. I don't know. I don't really have a read on that.
How many is James Wiseman going to go for in his revenge game against Gold State?
50.
I mean, he's in the rotation, so he's getting those shots up. James Wiseman touches that ball, it's a good chance it's going up, whether it's a good shot or a bad shot or a travel or a three in the key. It don't matter. That ball's going up. So he might get 15. You never know with him. Just it depends how many times he gets the ball passed to him. That's about as many shots as he'll have.
I will tell you, I got so I've been sitting behind Troy Weaver for these games. Very signature Tim Forkin thing to do. And now we got a reaction out of Troy for yelling other things, but the thing that got the crowd really going was when I yelled. Well, there was a play, I believe it was the Brooklyn game, where Jaden Ivey drove left to the rim, and James Wiseman appeared out of thin air to block his pathway to the rim. He just stepped in front of a drive of his own, like he's sliding over and help for his own player. And as the crowd quieted down after yelling at him for doing that, I yelled, James Wiseman, more like James Dumbman. And I got the biggest groan out of the entire section 114. And terrible. I'm sitting close enough to Troy Weaver where he heard it, and maybe he internalized that, and maybe change is coming.
That's terrible. You deserve every groan and then some for that.
Yeah, I thought it was good. Just so everyone at home, probably been to 10 games at this point. Probably sat in section 114 for 7 of them, maybe 8. And the quote that got Troy Weaver to turn around and yell at me and my friends was, "Hey guys, don't worry about it. We're a fourth quarter team." That was enough for him to get up out of his chair a little bit and looking back and see who's yelling at him and yell back. So that was the quote, not "Hey Troy, hope you enjoy the construction company you're going to build with all these bricks," or "Cancel the lease, Troy," or 63 wins in 4 seasons, Troy, or I mean, the things that we can't say on this podcast,
Mine's in section 114. That's what we're
I'm going to that Kings game as well. I am not in section 114. I'll actually be closer to the game than Troy Weaver is. I don't need to be closer to actually see what's going on. So
oh God. Well, I'm glad at least that you're finding some enjoyment out of this by being able to yell at Troy. When we were at the game, I did see him, but he didn't flinch for anything that either you or Vic was saying.
No, we were too far. We were too far. If I'm hesitant to give this out, but if you sit any row between 10 and 15 in section 114, you've likely, if he's there, you're in earshot of the man the architect of this architect of this historic franchise. You take that as you will.
Yes, and interpret that however you'd like. Guys, if nothing else, if no other thoughts, then we could wrap up this edition of the podcast. Tim, since you're our guest, do you want to plug yourself in any way?
Yeah, I've been on here before. I was at Tim Forkin NBA at one point. I was just at Tim Forkin. My sports burner, as I go into more personal business stuff, is my name backwards. So it's Mitt Nickroff. Uh, if the kind friends at Palace of Pistons could tag that in the pod description, that would be helpful. As I
I'm
look
sure
to
the
build
editor
up
can.
the sports burner, trying to separate church and state here with the business stuff.
Sure.
And then also some exciting Palace of Pistons things we're gonna be working on in the background here between the time this pod is out and maybe the next one.
Yes, that's exciting. Ooh, a tease.
Love a
We
good
love a good tease. There is no tease on this podcast. It's pretty much you are going to get what you're going to get. There's not a whole lot of surprise. Maybe Jasper does a funny impression.
Yeah, I was gonna say like we could start teasing, but it's not gonna be the kind of teasing that anybody wants to see. So
No. There's not enough tags for that kind
There's
of
a
teasing.
Jasper joke.
Yeah, there we go. We can end on a Jasper joke. Okay. Well, guys, thanks for joining me on this edition of the Palace Pistons podcast. Again, we'd like to thank our sponsor for this week's episode. That is Bet Online. You can use our promo code BLEAV, BLEAV, to get your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit when you use Bet Online. For my co-host Aaron Johnson and our special guest for the week, Tim Forkin, as he fist bumps in the air, I am Mike Anguilano. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of the Palace of Pistons podcast, part of the Believe Network, and we will see you all next time.